You're listening to Wild Things and Wild Places, a Muley Fanatic Foundation podcast that aims to discuss issues and efforts related to the Muley Fanatic Foundation mission, the conservation of mule deer, furthering the sport of hunting, and sound wildlife management.
Everybody knows I'm a Muley Fanatic.
It's time for Wild Things and Wild Places. And here's your guide, Joshua Coursey.
Welcome to Wild Things and Wild Places. Joining me today, I've got the president of the Wyoming Game and Fish Commission, Ralph Brokaw, a fifth-generation rancher from the Arlington area west of Laramie. Ralph began his term on the commission in March of 2019, a 6-year term representing District 2, covering Sweetwater, Carbon, and Albany counties. And Ralph, thanks for making the time to be with me.
Well, thank you for having me, Josh. I appreciate the invite.
No, absolutely. Ralph, I've got to know you over your time on the commission. I can tell you that I applaud your efforts and your service on the commission. I know that when folks talk about the Game Commission, and unless you're intimately involved, like the Muley Fanatic Foundation is with the ongoings of what the commission and the implications of the commission has and its roles of responsibility with the department and the management of our wildlife, it is a huge machine. Is that a fair assessment?
That's exactly what I've come to learn once I got on the commission.
I think about the plethora of issues from wildlife crossings to employee housing, shed antler collection, damage claims, aquatic invasive species, chronic wasting disease, invasive annual grasses, large carnivores, and then you get big game, resident, non-resident, fishing, sage grouse, fiscal demands. That's a lot of responsibility.
It's a big job. It is. It's all those things you mentioned. The commission has the responsibility to manage and regulate all those items you listed, and there's more. All the state's fisheries. Yeah, it's a big lift. It's a big machine. The department works very well, but the commission is really driving that bus, setting policy and regulation for the department.
Yeah, it is. It is absolutely a huge swath of responsibility. And I've seen several commissions over the years, and you're now approaching your final 13 and a half months or your final year into your service on the commission. But I would imagine even the first couple years, are you just trying to get your feet under you to just learn how this works?
You sure are, because when I joined the commission, I was familiar with my local game warden and my local region office and hunting seasons. And that's what I knew about the department. And yeah, those first 2 years, you're just trying to grasp everything. A lot of reading, a lot of interaction with department personnel, just to learn the ins and outs of how everything works, where your responsibilities are, when you're supposed to speak up, when you're not supposed to. We don't have any authority over personnel, but we get a lot of calls about personnel.
A lot, don't you?
So that's where you got to learn. That's when you got to learn. That's not our wheelhouse. You need to take that to these different division chiefs or whatever that situation is. But when it comes to money and hunting seasons and private land issues and public interests, we deal with that a lot more than I ever imagined we would. It's been a great experience, a humbling experience. I've enjoyed it very much.
Yeah, I would imagine it's probably one of the most special opportunities of service that one could have, and I'm sure you revere that in the highest regard.
I do very much, and they say that. I don't know if it's true, but they say it's the highest awarded, it's the highest sought after, it's the most meaningful, powerful position that our state governor appoints.
Yeah,
I'm honored to have served.
I'm glad you brought that up, Ralph. That is a governor appointment to be able to serve on that commission. And by design, I think it's extremely valuable that Wyoming's commission is designed and set up in the protocol of which it is. I think the members of the commission and what they represent and the districts they represent and the counties that entails, it gives a broad support for the entire state. And issues vary in Wyoming depending on where you live.
Absolutely.
What happens in Evanston is far different than what happens in Sundance.
You bet. Absolutely. And I agree. Of course, now I'm entering my last year and I sure want to continue to serve, but I support and I agree with the 6-year term rotating by counties. That just brings a lot of different people into that working machine to always keep it full of fresh ideas and support and bring that diversity that's across our state. Because you're right. I tried to bring a good representation of private land issues, because I'm a private landowner. But, there's been outfitters on the commission, and that's a component. There's business people for our urban areas. They're big players, a lot of interest there. So the continual change of the commission, I think, is a great way to bring the diversity of wildlife management through the commission into that policy setting opportunity.
You just recently had a meeting in Cheyenne, January 16th and 17th, and I wanted to talk about a couple of the things that were specific to mule deer at that commission meeting, because there's some things I think that need to really be celebrated and shared. The department has shown a tremendous commitment in the last decade, and even maybe decade and a half, I would say. But specifically to mule deer, let's touch on where you're at with as a commission and the direction that the commission gives to the department to continue to support what has been a very important project for mule deer and an effort that the department has taken on with the support of the Mule Deer Initiative.
You bet. Mule deer are Wyoming's iconic species. And I don't know, if you talk to any layperson, they love mule deer. Sportsmen love mule deer. Non-residents love mule deer, and they love mule deer in Wyoming. Certainly a focus of the department and the commission currently and in the past. And through the Mule Deer Initiative, I can't remember how many years we're into or the exact numbers of dollars the commission's put to that. I think we're crowding 10 million, maybe a little more, since the Mule Deer Initiative started. And so we continue to support and fund research projects and habitat projects to improve mule deer habitat. And what we're seeing, we've got some science behind us now that there's only so many calories on the landscape, and there's a lot of critters after those calories. And in southeast Wyoming, with our over objective of elk numbers on the desert areas and some of the western part of the state, our ranges, competition with wild horses, all these things are pressures on mule deer. Are such a sensitive species. They don't push back.
Yeah, very vulnerable, aren't they?
They're vulnerable, and currently the commission is strong advocates for really reducing elk numbers where they need it, really increasing habitat where we need it. We try and work with BLM. We support all their wild horse removals. No, they're really not wild horses. They're feral horses. There
you go. That's if you don't mind, Ralph, since you said that.
They're a species that needs managed like everything else, and they're not. There's just huge competition against mule deer. So the commission's currently very invested into anything we can do to help mule deer populations.
Yeah, one of those things in particular, and I know some of them have been completed, some of them are ongoing, but the statewide project that's being led by Wyoming Game and Fish Department associated with mule deer monitoring, specifically 5 herds. This is going to yield tremendous information on movement, demography, as well as help inform the status and trajectory of some of our mule deer populations in the state of Wyoming. And I think that speaks volumes to the commitment that the agency has in management of mule deer. These siteability surveys are going to be very important, but I sometimes look at this and I just was curious on your thoughts of this. It's like looking at a car. It's like you're kicking the tires, but you take that information and then you look under the hood with the information of the research that has been gathered, which has been tremendous. And the department has committed a ton of dollars. And the Wyoming range gets a lot of that effort, and rightfully so. It is a prized herd. There are other herds in the state that are just as valued to those that live in proximity to them. But the Wyoming range herd is iconic, and the department has put a ton of dollars into that. And then you get a winter like 2022, 2023, and the consequences have been significant, devastating. You're absolutely right.
Yep. And so with the department's recommendation, the commission's been 100% supportive of increasing lion quotas, black bear quotas, for more harvest of predators, more money into our predator management boards in that area to focus on some predator removal, because the winter was so devastating and mule numbers were so low. We feel that it's going to take 3 to 5 years of aggressive management to get back to where we were. And that was still so far below objective that we have to also at the same time continue the ongoing projects. And what we've learned from our Mule Deer Initiative is highway crossings. I can't think of the stretch right now. The first one we got funded and completed, I think it's Kemmer 189 or...
Oh yeah, the dry piney. Yeah, between Kemmer, LaBarge, Big Piney.
We start this initiative and we start learning about migration, and I don't remember the exact number, but half our collared deer are hit by cars. Okay, so we reacted to that, and we go down to bags. We look at Battle Mountain, tremendous mule deer fawning hill. I'm not familiar with the area, I just know the names, and there's no mule deer left fawning on that mountain. So they go in with their research and their monitoring, and that mountain's full of elk and black bears. So we've increased elk harvest opportunity there, increased black bear tags there, and hopefully we'll get that turned around. But you don't know until you go look, and so I think a lot of the projects with this money, we're starting to find and learn so many things about mule deer, how they migrate, how dedicated they are to their fawning areas, their migration routes. And so it's going to take more than just habitat work to increase mule deer numbers. We've got to do so many other things, I think, to help them. And the commission's committed to every tool in the toolbox to help out mule deer herds.
Well said, Ralph. I'm curious, how do you see projects, and it's another blessing that I think we have that we can be very proud of in the Cowboy State, but and I'm talking specifically to the work of Dr. Kevin Monteith, but how do you see projects like the Wyoming Range Mule Deer Project that is led by the Monteith Shop complementing the more broader monitoring efforts by the agency?
I think Monteith's work has been more focused and specific to, and what we've learned from that is when he started collaring fawns hours old and followed them through 3, 4, 5 years of their life, we learned so much more about migration and fidelity to home range, winter range, fawning areas. It was incredible. And I think that then can be used to our statewide managers, and he looked at one herd, that mule deer herd. We know mule deer do that, so now state managers can apply that knowledge to other ranges, other herd units, and look at, oh, well, we did have a big subdivision go in there outside of wherever, Centennials. Yeah, we lost that fawning range. So I think we use that in a broader stroke across the state for our state managers, and I think they're learning. I will say I think there's been some competition, but the commission has been supportive to the department's requests, fully funding them, as well as Dr. Monteith and what he's doing, because we're all in this thing together, and we need to share knowledge, and it's not a turf battle. We need to share knowledge and do what we can. Together, we'll be much more successful than piecemealing it apart.
You're right. We are in this together, and those that are concerned, and I think everybody is concerned. I don't know that you can go anywhere and talk about mule deer without concerns rising right out of the gate. It just seems like mule deer are struggling everywhere, and it's not just in Wyoming. It seems to be west-wide.
It is west-wide, for sure. For sure. And I've had the opportunity to go to WAFWA, the Western Association of Wildlife Agencies, as a Western regional group where all the Western states go. And I've gotten to go to that a couple times. And you're right. The West is suffering with mule deer. And it's interesting to me to watch different states at different levels of management where they are. And it's really fun to watch Angie Bruce, Deputy Director Bruce, and Director Brian Nesvik, when they go there, they just get surrounded by other states, and they're envious of the work that Wyoming's doing. I think Wyoming's really a leader on mule deer management, so we share that knowledge with other states, and hopefully it'll have a region effect that'll be helpful for deer across the West.
I feel like Wyoming's in the driver's seat in many aspects when it comes to wildlife management. Certainly, I know we are on wildlife crossings.
Yeah, for sure. We're definitely leaders there, doing some great work, got some more projects coming up. That's just a continued focus of the commission and the department.
Yeah.
And we're getting more aggressive on, we haven't mentioned it yet, but we've got to get more aggressive on chronic wasting disease. Yeah,
there was a couple of bulletin points I wanted to touch on, and I knew we would get to that one. But
that's another hammer on mule deer that we're working on.
When you say you're working on, what is there anything in the pipe that you can see coming towards fruition that is given great consideration at this point? I mean, what's coming down the road for? It seems like when you talk about CWD that there are as many unknowns as there are knowns. There's a lot of effort that's been put into how do we tackle this? How do we eat this elephant? And what's that first bite look like?
Well, I'm not really sure. I think Colorado's been leading with management. So they have a statewide CWD management plan with sideboards and triggers. And in our commission-approved Wyoming CWD management plan, we didn't do that. And we might amend that here when we learn some more. But their sideboards and their triggers have gone to some really aggressive harvesting of high density infected areas. And they're showing, they have mixed results, but they're showing that removing those infected animals off the landscape is the long-term best solution. And so the department's recommendation now, because the department listens to Wyoming's public, and Wyoming's public is just not ready to stomach that. The public resident hunter does not want to just go in and really harvest hard on buck mule deer. They just don't have the stomach for it. The department's position is listening to the public, looking at the science. We're watching Colorado and see what's going to work best there. But at the same time, we were discussing in Cheyenne at our meeting, that takes 3 to 5 years. And you can have prevalency rates go up 10, 15, 20% in that same time frame. So we're shooting ourselves in the foot, waiting for somebody else to do it, or we came to the consensus that we're going to watch what Colorado's doing. We're going to keep funding the Seville research unit with what Dr. Allen is doing there, and try some on-the-landscape management plans, increase water sources, reduce feeding areas. Unfortunately, there's a lot of places in Wyoming where feeding deer is popular out your backyard, and that's not good for CWD transmission. So increase enforcement there, and just keep trying to do all the little things that the department does today to try and reduce it without having to go to those hunting seasons that reduce mature bucks, because we just have a strong support of our sportsmen don't want to do that. And we hear that, and so that's really not on the future that I see right now.
Ralph, do you find that, and I know when the department you have a plan in place, and when something is attempted to be implemented, and there was some effort that was done looking at, because of the high prevalence in southeast Wyoming, that the department was just, quite frankly, it seemed like they were crucified for even suggesting such and just trying to generate. But what I found to be interesting is that the managers in those particular regions or areas had done their work in trying to generate a broad public support for implementing that plan, and had those conversations, had those meetings, got folks educated, got folks to understand, to look at why and what was motivating such actions. And then you get other places that aren't dealing with it in necessarily their own backyard, but are certainly part of the public, part of Wyoming's public, and then just came out and just made a huge uproar that just really sent it back to square one.
Yeah, absolutely. A great example is Sheep Mountain, south of Laramie, Centennial area. And biologist Lee Knox had a plan put together to go in there, and he had local support to increase buck harvest, and comments from across the board outside the area. So not the local hunters, but non-resident hunters and hunters from across the state that come there, adamant against it.
Yeah.
So that was really confusing which way we're going to go here. Ultimately, we did not increase buck harvest there, but our discussions with Cheyenne, we might just have to find an area, and we might just have to do it and see if it works.
Yeah, and I guess that kind of leads me to wonder.
The public is mixed.
And probably makes the commission and the department wonder, but truly, how do we identify what is acceptable broad public support so that we can define that and not have it hamper our abilities to try management actions?
Yeah.
I don't have the answer. It just seems to me like that's what it is.
Yeah, it is. That's what we're coming around to. So if we've done the education, the department did a great job educating the public, and Laramie was educated. They're all in. But then so many other people outside the area say, "Don't you dare." Who do you listen to? And ultimately, at the end of the day, we've got to protect wildlife and then serve people. And with CWD, we might have to take care of our wildlife before we take care of the people. And that's the hard pill to sell, hard pill to swallow. But some of these areas, we might get there, because doing nothing is not a solution.
That's not the answer.
Commission's very aware of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And part of that, I think what complicates that is when you live, like, for example, where I live in western Wyoming, 20 miles north of Kimmer, we're not living with it at an intimate level or a daily basis of seeing it firsthand, where folks in other part of the state are living with it.
Yep.
And it's something that they're seeing daily, and they're dealing with it on a daily basis. It does provide quite a bit of contrast. For me to have thoughts on that in someone else's backyard Where do you draw the line? And I'm sure that's a complicated process and a very tough decision. But
it is. And so the conversation the commission had with department leadership this last time was the department had some data from the 80s when mule deer were just at their peak. And they were hunting mule deer aggressively. And survey satisfaction was high. And they had $22-25 per 100 does. Now a lot of our herds have $35 to $40 per 100 does. And hunter satisfaction's low because there's less deer on the landscape. So how do we educate people to realize that you can have an incredible hunting opportunity with $25 per 100 does with more deer on the landscape than if what few deer you have on the landscape, you have $40 per dose. And so we're going to start to put together a new education campaign about mule deer management, and we might have to go low, but that's what it's going to take to get us back to a high. And when I found that out, that hunter satisfaction was in the 80s, 80-some percent with $25 per 100 does. Wyoming's had it so good for so long, we don't realize how spoiled we are as sportsmen. I would have deer back on my ranch if I had $25 per 100 does. I'd be tickled pink with that.
Yeah, I would be too.
If we can get people educated and supportive and find that data the department has, then we could have a conversation about, okay, we've got $40 per 100 does in this hunt area. That's what we've managed for. Our prevalency is high. We can shoot half the bucks, get more deer, and increase hunting opportunity. It's contrary to what you think, but it's what the science says we need to do.
Yeah, and I'm glad to see that the commission as a whole, and not just its current commission, but I think there has been a lot of movement in the direction of the commission over the last decade and a half to really support continued science and research. I know that's always been a component of the department, but the technologies, the advancements, the efficiencies that have been gained that allow for sound science to be completed have grown leaps and bounds. I can remember when the Wyoming Range project was started, and then shortly within a year, the agency was then contending with budget shortfalls, and it had just got some feet under it, and then they were going to put it on the chopping block. And I know budget shortfalls do things like that. That's when our organization was asked in year 2 of that project that it's either going to be discontinued because of budget shortfalls, or we got to commit $170,000 to keep this going. And we were such a young and green organization at that time. We made the commitment in blind faith because we knew how important that project would be, and that we wanted to be able to hang our hat on being a proponent for continued science and research to put that tool in the toolbox. But I guess where that leads me to think is, where do you see you and your role as a commissioner and as the president of the commission, or maybe even the current commission's role in the future of the Wyoming Range project, especially after the catastrophic winter of 2022-2023? Because I think there's still so much to be learned, and a winter like that provides that continued learning opportunity.
Absolutely. So we've just got to keep doing the research projects. We've got to adjust. I can't remember, but the loss of collared animals was just devastating. We've got 0% fawn recruitment. We know a population crash is coming because of that loss of that age class. So we need to just keep funding, keep researching, keep doing habitat projects, eliminate competition, whether it's fellow ungulates or it's predators. And I think it's going to take some aggressive management that the department really isn't that comfortable with, but they are listening to the public, and the public's get aggressive, and they're looking at a 3 to 5 year plan of keeping those management what they're uncomfortable with. Bear managers are uncomfortable with the quotas we set. Okay. But they're willing to suck it up because they know it's not going to crash the bear population. But they're willing to suck it up and ride together because we're all pointing in the same direction. And that's what I respect about the department. And just stay aggressive on all the things that we started this last year, and just keep doing them for 3 to 5 years just to get over the effects of that one winter.
Yeah. And I know at the commission meeting last week, the commission did approve additional funding for predator control on mule deer winter range within western Wyoming.
Yeah, I think that was another $250,000 for that, specific to there. And we upped bear quotas Can't remember the numbers.
The one thing about predator control, it seems to me, is that's the tangible object with claws and fangs that people can rally behind. But particularly with your background, I know you have some education in wildlife management. I know that as a landowner specifically, and the fifth generation landowner, that the landscape that you've lived on, it's not as sexy as a predator, but you recognize the invasive annual grasses that we have. That's another tall mountain that needs to be summited, and I think we're making progress there. There's a lot of great things in the future for us to be able to combat that.
I think so too, and that's certainly been a focus of leadership in the department right now. They've brought us recommendations. We've agreed 100%. We've increased budget for spraying on all our commission-owned properties, HMAs. I can't remember those numbers from the budget, but it was a significant increase. It's recognized as well for private landowners, and I know private landowners, if they work with their local NRCS through some EQIP contracts, there's an aggressive amount of money put in there for invasives, and I hope all those opportunities are taken full advantage of, because we can get aggressive on what we can see, and what we can see is what feels good is bears and predators, coyotes and lions, but we've got to make sure that habitat's in great shape when those deer are born, so there's got to be great habitat. So we continue to fund all those habitat projects. It's frustrating because there's no deer out there.
Right.
We feel like we're feeding a lot of elk, but you just got to have faith that what the department managers have said, what those biologists have said, we believe them, we support them, and we'll keep doing habitat projects.
And that's where it's got to start. You're right. I think we'll get there. I like that the impetus of our efforts as a state in trying to mitigate the invasive annual grasses, cheatgrass, that we're seeing just on so many different landscapes across the state. I like that I feel the same momentum and the same energy to be involved in getting ahead of that. Is very similar to what we've seen with the department's effort on aquatic invasive species and keeping that out of our waters in Wyoming. That's healthy, and I think we should all be proud of that.
I agree, and we should fight those. I've heard Director Nesvik, he will fight annual grasses and AIS species, invasive aquatics, until his last day, because those break the underpins that hold everything up. And if you want a big problem in a fishery that will affect your irrigation districts and affect your municipality waters, you fill them full of those darn snails. And nobody gets that right now.
Yeah, everything goes downstream. That's how it works.
You got to keep those critters out. And if you've got a hillside that burned, regardless of Forest Service or BLM let burn policies, put that aside, but it's now 85% cheatgrass, that's not habitat.
That's not habitat.
That's a sterile monoculture that's devastating to wildlife. Yeah. And that has to be addressed just as hard as anything else.
You're right. Addressed aggressively. That's right. Mm-hmm. President Brokaw, let me ask you specific to elk management and the challenges there, because that certainly is a topic you don't have to go far to find. Where is the commission at currently, in the department? Where is the mindset on how do we address this big problem?
Twofold. So what the commission's done, what the department's recommended is, I'm familiar with Southeast Wyoming. That's really where overpopulation of elk is so bad. It's also our highest density of private land. And no time will the department intercede, step on the toes of a private landowner. So access is a huge problem, but we respect private landowners' decision to allow or not allow access. With that comes some consequences of overabundance of elk. So we continue to try and work on increasing access opportunity when possible. We're looking at increasing dollars for access, and that's really hard because you just can't compete. The department just can't compete financially with an outfitter, and we don't want to compete with that private landowner on what his decisions are. We respect those fully, but there has to be some access to get some of these herds under control. The other thing is we've changed Chapter 34 and Chapter 56, the auxiliary hunt and the extended hunts on elk. And we think those aggressive opportunities, that's outside the regular hunting season, where we issue tags to sportsmen on 56, or through Chapter 34, we can just give tags to landowners. We can hire people to have those tags and just aggressively go in and harvest elk when we have opportunity of access. And It took us a long time to get here, and so it's going to take a long time to get out of here. It's a mixed support from the public on elk objectives. The public sportsmen, they love elk. They love lots of elk. It's an incredible opportunity. They've never had that much opportunity in 2 generations. So they love elk everywhere. The private landowner, he's had enough. He's got too many elk. It's too costly. He can't get away from them. So you've got 2 different ends of the spectrum there. And I think these auxiliary hunts, they're not publicly favored. They're not palatable. Nobody likes to just do that. But I think it's one of the tools we're going to have to use to get a control in some of these areas where we do have the access. And a good thing that's come out of that is all that meat gets to be donated. That's a plus through Chapter 56 issuance. The sportsman, of course, can keep their meat. If the landowner gives tags to hunters that he wants on his property, of course, those hunters get to keep their meat. So it's aggressive. It's not traditional elk hunting, but it does give us some opportunity to harvest some elk. And we're getting more successful with that. The department's been very willing. Chief King has been very willing to go that route with the commission's recommendation to be aggressive. And so that's what we're trying to do on some elk numbers.
Yeah, and those targeted elk are specifically for cows and calves. Is that accurate?
It is up to this point. It has been.
Okay.
We've got some imbalanced herds in Hunt Area 7, the Laramie Range, down here in Area 11. Our winter counts are coming in 2 branch antler bulls per cow.
Wow.
And they are heavily private, heavily outfitted, no access hunt areas. And so we have not done antlered hunts in Chapter 56 or 34, but there's conversation about that might have to come into play.
Yeah, it definitely seems to be a problem that persists in eastern Wyoming. That's I know it's a topic of great concern. On the same topic of challenges of elk management, what can you share, or what would you provide some insight to regarding feed grounds?
Ooh, that's gonna be a big one. So originally in the CWD management plan startup, the department realized very early on feed grounds was an offshoot of that, had to be its own management, different than a statewide management plan. In that process, the department had many public meetings, a lot of public participation, did a draft plan, put that out for public comment, took a beating, a lot of confusion in it, came back, and the department is rewritten. It's gotten much more specific in that plan, took all the comments from the first go-around, public comment. Now they're coming out, I think there's a second draft plan out now for public comment. I think it's on our website, the Game and Fish website. That's much more specific to feed ground management. And the department's take, I believe, on feed ground management is this is a 50-year plan. This is not a 5-year plan. We are going to keep funding and feeding elk as long as we have Forest Service permits to do that. And we've had to make that very clear. But that's the issue, is those Forest Service special use permits are always litigated by NGOs, and the Forest Service is tired of fighting them. They lose all the time. And so they're just really giving us a heads up. Eventually we're going to be sued. We might lose. You might lose your permit. We need to have a plan in place.
Does that plan, Ralph, does that involve looking at maybe the appropriate property that the state owns to maybe relocate or move feed grounds to? I'm absolutely with you on that. I think that folks don't realize or are very short-sighted that are wanting to see those closed without the recognition of the aftermath of consequences. And of course, I wear a mule deer hat. I'm always interested in what is best served for mule deer. But when I think about the potential of closing elk feed grounds in western Wyoming and the impact that would have on winter range where mule deer are, elk, they're very resilient. They're gonna survive. And mule deer, it's just going to be another knock to them, another blow that they just can't take any more of.
You're exactly right. I think on our 11 feed grounds, I think we're feeding north of 30,000 elk. And elk are big and tough. And if you quit feeding them, they're just going to go where they can find food. They're not going to stay there and shrivel up and go away, die. So
damage claims are going to go up.
Absolutely. If you're neighboring a feed ground, hold on. But in that management plan, there's talk about the department will do whatever we have to do to maintain those numbers, because that's the public's expectation. So we're looking at state-owned properties neighboring properties, feeding elk over time. I can't think of the name right now. It starts with a D. There's a feed ground. And maybe we start now that special use permit is being litigated. Maybe we start now feeding those elk and we start moving those elk every year and we teach them a new place to go. So the researchers and biologists, they're all discussing their knowledge and they're going to come to the commission. I believe it's in July, maybe later, but I know it's towards the middle end of this year to one of our meetings to approve their plan. And I think by then we'll have a pretty good handle on it.
Good.
On what's going to be best for feed grounds.
That's great to hear, and I'm glad that it's a long-term focused effort because it's going to take that.
Yeah, Regional Supervisor Brad Hovengate has been leading that, and he's done an outstanding job, and he's got his talking down pretty good, and we presented at our commission meeting. He says the first thing we have to discuss, this is not a 5-year plan like most management plans. It's a 50-year plan. It's education, again. People are smart. People want to do the right thing once they learn what the facts and what the goal is. And so another campaign, informational campaign by the department, and I think we'll have a successful feed ground strategy that'll keep elk numbers where the western part of the state wants them.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, I know we've talked a lot of topic about a lot of different things, President Brokaw, and I do appreciate your willingness to share insight on all of these. I did, as we're getting close to running out of what I think is probably a good durable amount of time for a podcast. I had a couple of things though I wanted to touch on, and that certainly I think you have probably had in your experience and your time now on the commission for 5 years. You have seen firsthand there is not another state agency in the world, in my mind, or certainly in our union, with a dedicated passion and commitment by the folks that make up our game and fish department. They are one of a kind. I'm always impressed with the genuine sincerity of passion that these folks hold in their occupations and their education and their just commitment to doing that. Just as you said, putting their best foot forward. And I know that's a little different for the role as the commission. You guys meet regularly, but I'm curious what your thoughts are. Is the April season setting commission meeting, is that something that you as a commissioner that you hold in different light than some of the other commission meetings that you have, knowing that's the one meeting that the public seems to gravitate to being involved with? Is that received well, or is that received with caution?
Received with caution.
Okay.
You're right. The department, the staff of the department across the board are the best in the nation, if not the world. They are the most dedicated people, employees, smart, that I've ever had the opportunity to work around or work with. When they bring season settings, you really have to listen to what they're saying because they know their area, they know what they're doing, and you have to trust that. Then the public weighs in, and you need to balance their interests. And then you have the private landowner, and you really have to listen to him because most wildlife lives on private land. As a commissioner, I proceed with caution, and I really listen to department recommendation. That's biological. Some some balance is put into what the public wants. For sure, their comments matter, whether it's a recreational hunt area or a trophy hunt area. The public has huge weigh in there. The department brings a biological number, and then we hear testimony from non-users and private landowners, and we have to balance that all out to find that middle ground that makes sense. And I proceed now into that April meeting. I read everything that the department sends out. They used to send it out a week before. Current commission were like, no, we need it 3 weeks as soon as possible. So we're getting that information last year. I think we had it 3 weeks before the meeting. Read every bit of it. And when you go in there, you really need to be paying attention because you can really have an impact in that process.
Yeah. What kind of weight do you put towards citizen science? You as a landowner, you feel like your landscape in your backyard better than anyone because it's an intimate aspect of your very existence. But you're just in one area, and when you go to a meeting like that and you have members of the public, they feel like they have those same observations and those same understandings of the working landscape of our wildlife resources in their area. Is citizen science, how valuable is that to the commission?
It certainly has a value, and it certainly has an impact on our decision making. Of course, I'm talking about the informed public that is informed on the issue, and they're with opinion based by experience or whatever, not those that
just want to bitch and moan. Yeah.
We hear from a lot of those guys, and so if you come up and and accuse us of rubber stamping the department, you pretty well get tuned out. If you send an email and the first sentence has you're just a 4-letter word, you don't have
SOB, guess what? I'm done
You're
reading.
not influencing my decision. But if you're a public sportsman and you've hunted Wyoming, and you've hunted your place and your special place, and now your kids are there and your granddad took you there and it's just not the same, you really catch our ear and we really want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah. On that note, President Brokaw, it seems like no matter where you go, it seems to be on the fence. Support for limited quota areas, support for moving to a resident region area or general areas. When you try to look at that conversation, it's clear as mud, isn't it?
It is clear as mud. They did it with mule deer. They did it with deer. I don't remember how many years ago they had to do it for the same reason we're doing it with elk now. The one thing I've learned about being on the commission is you get to write rules and regulation for statute the legislature passes and then direct policy of the department. So the legislature decides the price of tags, non-residents, and how many are going where. And so then we get to the season setting structure, and we know we're going to have its department decision on how many non-resident tags there are and how many residents. And so we got all these people coming and they all want to go to the best spot. Well, that doesn't help wildlife management. Through limited quota and general, that's worked for a long time, but every hunt area in the state is so oversubscribed. That's another thing I learned. I had no idea. It doesn't matter what the legislature prices a non-resident elk tag at. There's still thousands and thousands of more applicants than available licenses. And so the people are there, they want the experience, they just keep coming. And so regionalization of elk areas is just to try and spread. It's people management, really.
Yeah.
It's people management to achieve management goals for the wildlife that the department has to do first. That's how I grasp it and try and explain it to people. It's about people management. So you maintain your hunting opportunity, you maintain a good experience, but the department reaches objectives with balancing out where the harvest is going to be. And it's just clear as mud, just like that.
A lot of nuances there, isn't there?
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah. All right, President
It's truly one of those things where if you have 50% of the room happy, you did good.
Yeah. And the other half is
successful day. Yep.
Yeah. No, Ralph, I do appreciate your time so much. I think you've provided some great insight. I'm constantly trying to continue to be an ambassador for those that want to be more intimately involved in our wildlife management and the actions that are taken, that it starts with being able to be respectful and reasonable with a hat of understanding and listening, and then earn the opportunity to be able to engage and do it in a manner that is respectful. Because you're right, the folks that just want to throw everyone under the bus, that's not helping anybody. And a little circle back to what you said earlier, we're all in this together, and it's going to take us all. And there's a place for everyone to be involved. And the one thing I can say about the commission that I have really come to appreciate is how approachable and the seriousness of the responsibility that they take and hold as their role of a commissioner. But they want the engagement of the public with them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yep, you bet.
All right, Ralph. Is there anything you want to add? Anything that I didn't get to that you wanted to cover?
No, nothing comes to mind.
What about a new website? Is that still in the works?
Now, you want to talk about mud.
That's a show, isn't it?
It's terrible. So the commission has funded for a new website, and Nish, chief of that INE department, education, she is top notch.
Oh yes, she is.
She's grinding it out, but you can only go as fast as programmers.
Yeah. And
IT is a whole different breed of people that I don't understand, and data, and it's taken forever. But she reported last that I think the new website should be up and running. It's not going to make non-resident applications this year, but I think it's coming up this fall.
That's exciting.
And it's just layers of delays, which is so frustrating for for all of us, the commission and the department. But she's doing a bang-up job. And the new design, we've gotten to peek at a couple pages and how it's going to work, and it's going to be so much more user-friendly.
Well, it's better that you get it right if it takes more time than to rush it and be back at where you were. So
Yep, for sure.
All right. No, I appreciate that. I'm looking forward to it, and I know those things just take time. But President Brokaw, thank you very much.
Thank you, Josh. Had a great time.
And that wraps up another episode of Wild Things and Wild Places. But remember, the journey doesn't end here. Make sure you never miss out by subscribing. Whether you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, streaming us on our website, or following us on social media, subscribing is the best way to stay connected. Thank you for joining us, and stay tuned for more wild episodes.
Everybody knows I'm a muley fanatic.